recording it. So I think it's recording now. Yes, okay. So, oh gosh, sorry, there's still people coming in and I'm just admitting them. Okay. So welcome everyone to our event, which is called Where Two Are Gathered. And tonight we're going to be reflecting and challenging our own personal views of disabilities and also learning about the theological basis and practical path of friendship. And we have our lovely speaker, who is Heather, who will be speaking tonight. And we also have some people who will be sharing their lived experiences. So we have some individuals who have disabilities who will be sharing, as well as those who have befriended those with disabilities, and we'll be hearing more from them. And at the end, we're going to finish with a Q&A panel. And before we continue, or I guess we start, I want to just give a big thank you to Heather, who is going to be speaking tonight, and also to the Village Eulogia organization, which is a not-for-profit Christian organization which supports families and individuals with special needs, and where I had the chance to intern this summer, and which inspired this workshop. So thank you for everyone from the organization and everyone also who share their experiences for contributing to this workshop tonight. And without further ado, I'll be introducing our speaker, Heather. So Heather is a oh my gosh, sorry, someone is calling me. Is a disability advocate and speaker, and a member of the City of Barrie's Accessibility Advisory Committee. And I'm really excited for her to speak tonight at this event, as she will be sharing some of her lived experiences as she lives with many disabilities herself, along with the members of her family. And she also is very well versed in speaking and understanding disabilities in the context of theology. And she's currently pursuing her Master's of Divinity at the University of Toronto, and also serving as an elder and associate pastor at Fox Community Church. So welcome, Heather, and I'll let you can take it away now.
Thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks for having me tonight. I'm really looking forward to being with you. I am going to see if we can make this a little bit more interactive tonight, because I don't know about you, but I am a student and I am still on Zoom for most of the day, most days, and by 7:30, I'm getting tired and my attention is waning, and I don't want anybody dropping off halfway through and missing something really important. So I'm going to get you guys involved tonight, and we're going to start. I'm going to bring up the whiteboard. I don't know how many people have used this before on Zoom, but you'll notice at the top of your screen, you've got the option to, what's the phrase there, Christy? I'm sorry, I can't remember what it is. There's an option for you to be able to annotate. Yes. Let's just see if we can draw a straight line. That's all I want. I just want a straight line. Aha, that's how we get a straight line. All right, so we're just going to start with this straight line. And thank you, Kat. We can use Kat's straight line too. I don't mind. I'm not fussy. And over here on this end, we're going to put a 1, and over here on this end, we're going to put a 10. And this is a comfort scale. Okay, so I want you to start by using the stamp function. It's one of the choices on your screen, and you can choose whichever stamp makes you happy, and just put a stamp on this line between 1 and 10 where you would place yourself in terms of your comfort with disability. You've come to this session, but I don't want to make any assumptions. How comfortable do you feel with disability? And understand that word however you feel. Is everyone able to find the stamp option? For those just joining.
It's very strange. I used it before, but today, for whatever reason, I can't find it.
So if you go to the top of your screen, should be a bar across the top, and you want to choose the annotate button.
That whole menu bars disappear from my screen.
Bring your cursor right up to the very top of your screen and it should appear for you.
No, it used to. I've used it before, as I said, but today, I guess I'm just gonna watch.
Don't see view options. You can't even see that.
So disappointing. Okay, so for those of you who are able to, and I'm so sorry to leave anyone out, that's not my intention here at all. That is very useful, and I am going to just save that for us. And then I am going to erase it. I know, very mean, but oops. Nope, eraser, eraser. All right, and now I want to dig a little bit deeper here. Most people are more comfortable with certain types of disabilities than with other types of disabilities. So I want us to think now about disability in terms of 4 quadrants. And I want us to think about physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, social disabilities, social disabilities, and sensory disabilities. And so I would like you to invite you to use your stamps again, if you are able, to put yourself in where you feel you're most comfortable. So use this as a quadrant system, and sort of you can put yourself a little bit more to the physical side or the intellectual side or the sensory or the social. Where would you orient the place where you are most comfortable in terms of disability?
Sorry, Heather, are you asking us to choose one of the 4 or to place ourselves strategically?
Place yourself strategically.
Okay.
Anyone who's doing a math program in university will have advanced knowledge of how you can use quadrants to mark your position. But for the rest of us, it was just a way of thinking about it, right? We're really just trying to get our brains into the topic at hand for tonight. All right. Thanks everyone for participating. This makes it so much better. And so then I'm going to save this again for us, and I'm going to erase again. So if anyone wants to help me with the erasing, it'll go faster. It's a bit of a process. Computer mice do an awful lot of things wonderfully, but this is something that they can be a little bit slow at. All right, and now I want us to think about how we feel about the idea of connecting with those with disabilities. And I want you to write up on here some of the first words that come to your mind when you think of actually having a conversation with or connecting with someone who has a disability. Any words that come to mind as you think about actually talking to someone with a disability or actually spending time with them. So says a woman with much experience.
Sorry, Heather, can you repeat the question again? I missed it.
What are the first words that come to your mind when you think of actually having a conversation with or connecting with someone with a disability? All right. So we get a wide range of words here. And one of the things I notice about the words that I'm getting up here are that the people who are attending have had some experience with disability. These are words that tell me that this is not your first time talking or thinking about disability. And that's exciting because it means we get to have hopefully some deeper, richer conversations. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that disability makes a lot of people feel really uncomfortable. And whether that's you or not, it's so important to know that that's a thing, right? To realize and recognize that disability is something that can make people feel uncomfortable. And for many people, that's because they feel like they have little to no experience with disability. And when you don't feel like you have an experience with something, you can feel afraid or uncertain. Now, a lot of people will tell me, I'm not afraid of those with disabilities. But then we start talking about how they feel. And we notice that when you feel afraid, our tendency is to react in one of 5 ways. These are fight, flee, freeze, fawn, and force. These 5 ways of interacting with fear, of responding with fear, look like this. Fight, a response might look like frustration or even anger that you were being asked to make this connection. If you had a flee response, you might find a way to get out of doing the activity. If you tend to freeze, you might still be there in the moment, but you would start to feel at a loss for words, perhaps, or you might struggle to know where to start. And for sure, you'd be hoping that someone would come and rescue you as soon as possible. If your response is fawn, you might accept the task because you were asked to do it, but feel very overwhelmed inside, all the while you were doing the task in question. And finally, force is, if that's your response, you might try to control the situation, and more importantly, try to control the individual in question. And if any of these are responses you recognize in yourself when it comes to disability, then these are signs that there might still be some fear lurking under the surface for you on this topic. And that's okay as a place to start. But can you see any potential risks to approaching someone out of this fear? Just unmute yourself if you're comfortable and give me some ideas. What might some risks be if you approach someone out of one of these 5 fear factors? Any ideas?
I feel like if you were to avoid or reject, like especially in the house of God, I think that's very hurtful to someone who is in God's family.
Mm-hmm. For sure. They're going to start to interpret that as God avoiding and rejecting them, right? That's maybe not the message we want to give out. Any other ideas? What happens if we start to control people? What happens if we get overwhelmed in a situation?
I got a message from Bella and she just said force does not work. And my own opinion also is that when we try to control someone, we're also not letting them, like we're not being open to the fact that we can receive something from that relationship and that like they also have something to teach us.
Mhm. And it doesn't work, which is a very, very important insight. So when we relate to those who are different than us, whether it's because of their disabilities or their ethnicity or their gender or their sexuality, when we relate to them out of fear, we risk mistreating those God has made in God's own image.
Also, I just
Yeah,
got
go
to hear
ahead.
a response from someone. Also, they said that when you try to force, you're missing to understand or to see the person as they are, and you're just responding for the sake of responding.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there are some risks to this fear, but what's driving that fear? What makes us react this way? I am looking for ideas again. I told you I was going to get you to participate tonight.
Lack of knowledge and understanding of the person that we're dealing with and their particular disability.
Absolutely. If we don't know, it can be really scary, can't it? Any other ideas?
Feeling like you're gonna make them look stupid or you're gonna look stupid in a situation.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or feeling like you're going to fail. I see a hand raised. Feel free to go ahead.
Sorry, could you please repeat the question? I have my kids
Yes,
here.
that's fine. The question is, what are some reasons that might be driving our fear? What are some
Fear
things
of
that,
interacting with the people with disability.
yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. So the first fear is saying the wrong things, using the wrong terminologies.
Mhm.
For example, do you say a disabled person or person with disability? So there's a lot of fear that's associated with it. And then as a result of that, there's the embarrassment aspect of it. And then as a result of that, you become emotionally paralyzed. So that's
Absolutely. All very astute. Yes, for sure. The truth of the matter is that there are lots of reasons why we might be afraid, right? And each of us will have different reasons based on our different life experiences. But, and this is the critical thing to everything else that we're going to talk about tonight, it's absolutely impossible to love someone, no matter how much we want to, when we approach that person out of fear. Consider 1 John 4:18 with me. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Or think about this list of fears in contrast with the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians 5. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. How does this list of fear responses match up with the fruit of the Spirit? They're not connected at all, are they? They're almost like polar opposites. They're like magnets that just force themselves apart, right? It doesn't work. But the problem is that just because it doesn't work doesn't make our fear go away. We can't just argue ourselves out of fear. So what can we do about it? The first step is to acknowledge it. And my hope is that by the end of this session, you'll have new tools that allow you to engage more holistically and appropriately with those with disabilities, but also given the comfort levels that each of you showed us at the beginning of the workshop, I'm really hoping that this gives you more tools to be able to support those around you when they are interacting with those with disabilities, right? because I wrote this not knowing who I was going to have, and you guys are definitely like on the comfort level side of things, which is fantastic. So we're just going to adjust it a little as we go along. But I do hope that you come away with something that's really tangible. We're going to pause now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Christy's going to share some of the wisdom that we have from some folks who have spent time building friendships with those with disabilities.
How would I describe my friend with a disability? I would say that he is funny, he is very, very friendly, and once he trusts you, and he's very talkative, he is the life of the party, he helps you like become super comfortable, and he is just a joy.
My friend is someone who is extremely caring, always puts other people before themselves, and they're super fun to be around. They're also really courageous, and they never let their disability stop them from learning and trying new things.
So my friend with a disability is someone that feels with their whole heart and their whole body. It's just one of those things where whether this person is happy or sad, I always to some degree know how they're feeling, no matter how unfiltered this may be. When this person is excited to show me something or to explain or demonstrate something to me, they're always putting in their all doing this. So my favorite thing to do with my friend is almost, or it's very similar to what I would just want to do with any other friend. It'd be kind of dependent on how we're both feeling. For the large part, this would be some form of activity, whether that be playing ball outside or maybe inside doing some activity around drawing or coloring, or even largely individual things that we can both challenge ourselves on, such as like rock climbing.
There's so many things we like to do together. I would have to say some of our favorites are going to the park to play basketball, building puzzles, playing board games, or doing arts and crafts.
What do I like to do with my friend with disability? We like to laugh, dance, and talk. And those are the things that we've explored so far. We haven't really tried other things, but hopefully there's opportunity for that later on when we meet up. My friend taught me to love, 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 and put all the judgment aside and just love.
My friend has taught me many things. I'm constantly encouraged by their perseverance and their willingness to step out of their comfort zone, which also encourages me to do the same. Another thing that my friend has taught me is the importance of having a childlike faith, to be curious, ask questions, and to find joy and marvel at the simple things in life.
Having a friend with disability changed the way that I understood disability, because it's not the entirety of that person, and it's just a part of them. And also I learned that, I guess perhaps as part of their disability or maybe not, that they are more open to being vulnerable and authentic to other people, and that is what I really, really appreciate from my friend. And they're willing to receive help and support, and that's something that I have to learn for myself as well.
I feel like for myself, definitely before I had any formal, I guess, interactions via volunteering or work with individuals with disabilities, I always had my preconceived notions, thinking I knew what I was getting myself into, or at least being comfortable enough and having them in some form of a box that I was like, okay, I know not maybe everything, but I know enough that I think I'd just be all right interacting with them. And I feel like via my friendship, actually getting to know this individual and these individuals in person has definitely changed my view quite a bit. It's always humbling, getting your thoughts and your biases checked, and it's always, I feel like, a very good thing, just being able to, kind of look back, reflect, and like reconcile these differences that you thought you might have had for these people, and having them like break through those boxes in essence. But it's definitely something that has changed my view and my perspective for these people.
I think at an individual level, it's encouraged me to love others unconditionally and without judgment. But further, this friendship has really widened my views and beliefs of what a true community looks like. A community where everyone can find belonging and acceptance, where every person is recognized and supported, and most importantly, where everyone is counted as a blessing. Because coming together as a community is a beautiful representation of the body of Christ and a reminder of Jesus' love for us. And so, part of participating in this community, I also learned the importance of creating an accessible environment where everyone can participate and be included to experience God together. Being part of this community is truly a glimpse of heaven, where we can learn to show Jesus' love, walk alongside each other, carrying each other's burdens, but also sharing moments of joy.
Thanks for putting that together, Christy, and thanks to everyone who contributed to it. All right, you're back on the hot seat, everyone. The next question is, we're gonna go down the theological path for a little bit. So who can tell me what the gospel is? Yeah, simple questions. We're starting easy. Who's got a short and sweet answer for the gospel? It can be your Sunday school answer. It can be, I think the answer is a squirrel, but I'll say Jesus just to be sure, Anybody?
The good news that Jesus died for us so that we could restore our broken relationship with God.
Okay, awesome. So you've already done the first step and broken it down from fancy pants language to like normal people language, which is amazing. What that introduces though is, and in fact, you actually skipped my second step. So you've skipped step one that people usually say, which is something complicated and theoretical, and step two, which is that they'll say that the gospel is that you have to believe in Jesus and confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, and then you'll be saved or something like that, right? And these ideas around what the gospel is are actually really important when it comes to working with those with disabilities, because many of the ways that we phrase the ideas around the gospel shut out those with mental and intellectual disabilities. And that's a problem, right? Because is the gospel message just for those who can speak with words, who can reason and offer rationality? Is it just for those who finished high school, or just for those who have a university education? Maybe with time, just like getting a job has gotten harder and you need more education. Maybe getting the good news gets harder and you need more education. Maybe one day you'll have to have a PhD to be saved. That's not actually how it works, right? But when I say it like that, then you start to get the idea, right? So we want to phrase this gospel idea in a way that's truly good news for all human beings. And Mary's answer there was great. So Mary, can you repeat what you said?
I'll try. The good news that Jesus died for us so that we could have our relationship with God restored.
Okay, that's awesome. So now that we have that definition of the gospel, tell me, how did you first come to take in this message? I'm assuming everyone here has heard this message before, that it's not your first time hearing it. If it is, reach out to somebody, ask them some questions. Those are still a lot of fancy pants words, and we'll break it down some more and chat with you more about it. But if you've heard this for a while, when was the first time you took this message in? Note that I very deliberately haven't used the words hear or know or understand in my question. How did you first take in this idea? I'm going to have to just start randomly picking on people. Any ideas? When did you first take this in? Cindy, you're the only one with your camera on, so.
Yeah. Okay. Pick me. It's fine. When I took it in, I think, I guess when I'm in my teenage years and I started to like explore faith, explore Jesus, and you know, the reality of his kingdom, his work in teenage years. Because like technically I did pray to God when I was younger, but I guess I didn't realize my relationship with him was broken. So I don't know. It's kind of like I feel like I acknowledged and I understood that my relationship with him was broken in my teenage years when I started exploring faith. But then when I was younger, I was able to access God and just I didn't even think about that there was something broken. So I don't know. It's like I wanted to present both answers because I'm interested to see what you're thinking about that. If we're talking about restoring our broken relationship with Jesus, I mean with God.
So what if I rephrase what the gospel is, and I say the gospel is the good news that God loves us? What if I
Oh yeah, when I'm a kid. Yeah.
And simplify it that much more? Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it that first taught you that? Was it words, or was it actions, or was it a felt presence? What was the first thing that got you?
That he would take away my nightmares when my mom prayed with me.
So your mom would come and sit with you and be present with you.
Yes.
And pray with you.
Yes.
And invite God into that space with you. Mm-hmm. And you were able to tangibly feel God's presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Got a message from someone who said that be friends with them so that eventually they can understand how Jesus can be their friend.
That's exactly what I'm going at. But you're like 7 steps ahead, like you're wildly ahead. That's amazing. We are going to take the slow route there, which is totally fine. But that is entirely where we are heading for. So now you've got the preview edition, which is awesome. How did people first take in who Jesus was in the Gospels? Right? There's no social media, no opportunity for anyone to watch his sermons online before they show up at church. Before anyone could hear what Jesus has to say, they had to first encounter physically either Jesus himself or someone else who had met Jesus, right? There first had to be this physical encounter. So it's really important for us to start with this universal idea of the theological basis for friendship. This isn't something that is just for those with disabilities. This is for everyone that you interact with, everyone that you want to introduce to Jesus, everyone you want to nurture and disciple in the way of Jesus. It's even for you personally yourself. One of the core ways in which we get closer to Jesus and understand who Jesus is better and what Jesus did for us better and how Jesus calls us to live more the way Jesus would be if Jesus were us is situated in our engagement in relationships. But there are a lot of types of relationships out there, aren't there? There are bosses and employees, professors and students, parents and children, officials and citizens and refugees and undocumented workers. And all of these might have relationships with one another, but these are not the type of relationships we are called to engage in this instance. Because these aren't the types of relationships that bring about transformation in us as human beings. These relationships just reinforce the status quo. And that's not the point of church, regardless of how well the church is remembering this at any given time. So I want to look really quickly at two stories in the Bible. And I want to look at them through a disability lens. The first story I want to look at is the story of David and Mephibosheth. The passage is found in the Hebrew Bible in the Old Testament at what is considered to be the height of the Israelite kingdom, and it requires a bit of background. The first king of Israel, Saul, has been defeated by David, and Saul's son Jonathan, once David's best friend, has been killed as well. And David himself is now king, and Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth, is the only one who has survived in Saul's family line. But his survival came at a price, because he became lame, perhaps paralyzed or with broken and poorly healed hips, legs, or ankle bones, because of an accident that happened while he was fleeing with his nurse at the age of 5 after Saul and Jonathan were killed. Over the years, he's grown up, he's gotten married, he even has a child of his own, but he's basically managed to survive by being cared for by his nurse and her family, a long way away from the eyes of the king. More than that, he's the rightful heir in Saul's kingly line. He's spent his entire life at risk because of that, at being killed by those loyal to King David. If that's not enough, 2 Samuel 5, 6-8 says that the moment when King David goes on record as hating those who are blind and lame, and King David at that point bars them from the house of David. This moment in Israelite history actually extends the prohibitions against those with disabilities at the temple, as well as creating barriers to any connection or conversation between those with disabilities and the king. Yet after all this time has passed, after David's got the kingdom set up and the anger he felt at Saul has dissipated and he begins to feel the loss of his friendship with Jonathan, David asks if there is anyone left in Jonathan's family. And when he finds out about Mephibosheth, David sends for him. Now, I think if I were Mephibosheth at that point, I would have been terrified. The assumption would have been that David would have him killed because he was the potential rival to the throne. The assumption would have been that because he was disabled, he needed to be kept out of view and away from the sacred and secular leadership of the king because of King David's statement. But instead, Mephibosheth, the rival's life was protected. Mephibosheth, the dispossessed, had the provision of his land restored to him. And Mephibosheth, the disabled, was given a place at the king's table, a place at the seat of government, of leadership of the country, a position of purpose and meaning. In other words, David didn't simply offer a unidirectional relationship of power. It wasn't top down. David didn't just give something to Mephibosheth and send him away. Instead, David entered into a relationship of mutual interdependence. And the result was transformation and healing for both David and Mephibosheth. Our second story comes from 1 Corinthians 12. Here, Paul is writing to the Christians at Corinth and explaining to this early church that the communion meal that they were eating wasn't a meal you just got to show up and enjoy. And it was definitely not a meal that you should enjoy in your own stratified social groups with people who looked like you and talked like you and thought like you and acted exactly like you. But the church in Corinth at the time had gotten confused about this. I don't know about you. Maybe you've looked around your church and wondered whether maybe we've gotten confused about this as well. But their communion meal had started to look like any other meal in Corinth at the time. The rich arrived early, sat at the best table, ate the best food, gorged themselves as was their practice, and did so to the exclusion of the rest of the believers. Those others who were part of the church in Corinth, the widows, the disabled, the slaves, the outcasts, they were fed, but they were fed at a different table, down a side hallway with different food, ostracized from the social realities of the rich, abled masters in the other room. And Paul is furious about it. He's not just a bit bothered. He's not a little bit hot under the collar. He is irate. To Paul, communion is a meal that is sacred, and a meal that is made sacred by the presence of and relationship with those on the margins, including specifically those with disabilities. And so directly after these comments about the meal, Paul launches into the famous words about being the body of Christ. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Instead, says Paul, we are designed to be in mutual interdependent relationship with one another. Why? Because just like our own physical bodies would completely fail to meet any purposes we or God might have for us if our eyes refused to help our hands with any tasks they were given, or our hands refused to help our eyes with their tasks, we as the body of Christ will completely fail to fulfill our calling and purpose and mission as the church unless we are all interconnected with one another in mutual bidirectional friendship. I'm going to invite Christy now to play our next video, which is some of the voices of lived experience that we were able to bring to you for tonight's seminar. Technical glitches notwithstanding. It's coming, folks. She's working on it.
My name is Liam. I'm 11. I'm grade 6. I enjoy reading, playing video games, and playing with my being there and learning this news about God. I remember they had these large bins of Lego on tables, and I just what build whatever. I feel excited. When it comes to like accessing like the door, like just getting into the church in general, it's mainly like stairs. I go through the back door.
Go to the back door.
Can be sometimes hard during the winter, but like it can get very icy. It's not like I'm not sure how to explain it, but like I can access it, but at times it can be hard to access. Well, this is like the ramp or the entrance that I'm using is like an actual like accessible kind of like ramp. This is like it's like an incline plane into the doorway. It's not like an actual ramp. I can do things. I can do a lot of things on my own. And I do not want to do that. Not really, but like I haven't really been left out before. I just don't want it to.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca. I have ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. I have been going to church since I was very little, and my parents go to the same church too. When I was very young, My Sunday school teacher told me even though I was running around nonstop during Sunday school, I could answer all the questions correctly. Mom also told me whenever she stopped and talked to people after worship, I always pulled her away because I couldn't wait and I was afraid of many people. Now I am going to church for young adult ministry, worship, and Sunday school. Almost every week, I go to 2 Sunday schools. One is the adult Sunday school with Daddy, and the other one is special needs Sunday school. Currently, all the meetings are online. I feel calmer joining all the programs at home. I feel I am included, especially when we are playing games or going on an outing because those are the fun time. Bible study and sermons are difficult to attend because it takes a lot of time for me to learn what the Bible is talking about. Young adult ministry is for people who are between 20 to 30 years old. I attend their meetings almost every Thursday. They have worship, sharing, Bible study, and games. I keep going because it helps me to get used to Bible study and play new games. When someone is excluded, I think he or she may feel bored. I did not feel excluded at church. Maybe because they have known me since I was a baby and my parents and I help a lot at church. I remember at youth group camp, people invited me to play capture the flag with them. People explained the rules to me so I understood how to play the game. I followed what the people did and I felt happy. Sometimes I do find it hard to understand and be interested in their conversation after the program time. I'll usually sign out because it is hard for me to follow the topic, especially when everyone talks. My parents and I helped out at church. I was one of the ushers in the ushers team before the pandemic. And my dad and I helped in the children ministry. The young children looked up to me as a big sister. They shouted happily from afar, pointed at me and told their parents about my name. I remember I helped out at the church barbecue with other people. We handed out burgers and hot dogs to people coming to our church and it felt good. I also helped out at the stationery drive for children going back to school. We collected, sorted food donations which go to our local food banks at a nearby church. Every year, we watered the plants in our community garden together with my parents and we had fun. I felt included at church because I am involved in many different areas even though making friends is still a problem to me.
What's your name?
Elizabeth.
And do you remember how old you are?
16.
You are
16.
24.
24.
And what's my name?
Lynn.
Lynn. And who am I? I'm your mom. Am I your mom?
Yes.
Yes. And most of the time, do we go to church together?
Yes.
Yes. Elizabeth and I have been members of our church for over 20 years. But, and that's always the but, many people did not really know her or interact much with her. So Elizabeth's 24, but part of the reason people didn't know her is she has severe autism. And when she was younger, she had some unusual behaviors. And so people, I think, were nervous because they didn't really know enough about her. And so we were known, but it was kind of Lynn and Elizabeth. So what was missing was our individual identities.
Mm-hmm.
Me to be Lynn, not Elizabeth's mom, and for Elizabeth to actually have an identity and a role separate from mine. So partly I think it was because mostly people saw Elizabeth only when she was with me. And one of the things that we started to notice, especially as she got older, was generally if people came up to talk, they talked to me and they directed any questions or comments just to me. Elizabeth doesn't have a lot of verbal speech, but she can answer simple questions, and she certainly really likes when people do something as simple as say hello. And greet her and tell her nice to see you.
Yeah, Elizabeth. So do you like when people say hi to you at church?
That's it.
Yeah. How does it feel when people say hi and are friendly? It feels
It's comfy.
It feels nice and comfy. Yeah. When we go to church now, do people say hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have friends at church?
Yes.
Yeah. And if you want to do something at church, is there people that will come and sit and talk with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you like music at church?
Yes.
And what happens here?
She
That's the
piano.
piano. And how does it sound?
Anxious.
No, how does the piano sound?
But comfy.
It sounds pretty.
Go play.
Does the piano sound pretty?
Yes.
And how about the guitar? The guitar?
Guitar was fine.
The guitar was fine. So it was one of the things Elizabeth enjoyed, right to the point that during the singing of one of our regular hymns, Lord of the Dance, Elizabeth felt happy enough and comfortable enough that she was actually starting to dance to the hymn. And I was going to say something to her because she sort of stepped out into the aisle. And then I heard three somewhat senior ladies who were sitting behind us say, "You go, Elizabeth, you go, girl, go ahead, dance it out." And, that felt really good. And I think if people hadn't by then gotten to know her, they might have had a different attitude of, what is that person doing? Stop. Church at the Pub was just an informal gathering of people from the church once a month. We had one specific pub we used to go to, and everyone would just buy their own dinner. And it was just a chance to sit and socialize informally. And the minister very often a couple of days before would send out a couple of thought-provoking questions and say, here's something we might want to talk about. So Elizabeth couldn't necessarily join in the conversation. It was way above her intellectual ability. But I mean, who doesn't want to go out to a pub? Stop. Who doesn't want to go out to a pub and enjoy nachos and feel like they belong there with everyone else?
Yeah.
So just the fact that the church said, we're going to be doing this, would Elizabeth be interested?
Mm-hmm.
Again, just
Yeah.
another example of being included, being asked.
Yeah. And how does that make Elizabeth feel when she gets asked?
How does it feel when people say, would you like to come? It makes you feel
Quiet.
It makes you feel quiet. Doesn't it make you feel good?
Yes.
Yeah, it makes you feel good when people want you to come and they say, please come and have fun with us. Every church I've ever been to, food has been a big part of church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were lunches after church, there were church picnics, there were socials, there was bazaars with meals, like there just was food always. And so that was another way we looked to make Elizabeth more visible, but also to show people that she could contribute. So it to feel like you belong. It's not just that people say, oh, I know who that person is, but that they feel that you have a purpose and you serve a role. So Elizabeth started just by drying a few dishes after we would have meals at the church, but then we got involved with helping with setting up the chairs and carrying trays of stuff in and out to the kitchen and clearing tables and sweeping floors and just being involved at the mealtime, because why not? It's something you can do. You don't have to have a lot of language to be able to help.
Yeah.
In order to feel included doesn't mean I can sit beside you and therefore I'm included. Included means whatever activity is going on, you have a part in it. So you have a role. And I mean, in our own lives, we have there are places we have roles.
Mm-hmm.
So there are places that we go and we don't really feel we have a role unless we're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
We attend a concert, but we wouldn't consider ourselves having a role at a concert because we're just there. So there's a difference between making something accessible so that a person with a disability can be there and making something inclusive where that person has a role, they have something to contribute. Their contribution may only be their presence if they are profoundly disabled, but in many cases, there's still something they can be doing as a role beyond just being present.
I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, Elizabeth, can you tell me what you're doing in this picture?
You are holding the collection,
Please.
the collection plate. And so what do? We hold it and we pass it on to the people. Yes, we pass it on to the people.
Yeah.
And what do we have to do? What do we have to do when it's all full? We have to carry it very
careful.
Yes, we have to be very careful so it doesn't spill.
Yeah. Elizabeth, do you like holding the collection plate?
Do you like doing collection?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And here, do you remember what we're doing here? What do we do in church? Lots of times we do
good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What else? What else can you say?
Come back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
And how does it feel when you talk to people and they smile and they say hello? It feels good. It feels good. Example to me of how comfortable she felt, how I guess I have to say that the whole sense of belonging, of knowing that this is where she was supposed to be and knowing that, you know, there were people here.
Mm-hmm.
When she was younger, we walked together, we were hand in hand, you know, she walked with me. And as an adult over the last few years, as more people have gotten to know her, as more people are speaking to her, She doesn't wait for me. As soon as we have parked and the car is off, she opens the door, out she gets, and she just takes off. She's up the stairs, she's into the narthex, she's hanging up her coat, she's going into the church, and she's choosing where she wants to sit. So that she may not be able to tell me in words, I feel like I belong, but that action is what says to me that she feels comfortable. She feels like she belongs, that she can just go into the church and be choosing a place to sit.
Yes.
And we don't have stop. We don't have to think about it. So we don't have to sort of look around when we're sitting and go, oh, is there anyone we're going to disturb or anything like that? There's actually people from the church who have said to me, come and sit with us, or you're welcome to sit near us, or it's great to see Elizabeth. And like I say, it all started with just giving people a chance to get to know her better, of encouraging them to speak to her, encouraging them to ask questions of me if they were unsure of, and that, Elizabeth as an adult has chosen to be involved in church, has chosen that she wants to get up on a Sunday morning and go to church, and how I would like her to be able to embrace the church experience without having to have mommy right there beside her.
Thanks so much to all of those involved in putting this together, to Liam and Rebecca and Lynn and Elizabeth, and of course, Christy for the efforts she did in making sure that all of that got recorded and captured and edited down for us for tonight. Thank you. So now I want to turn our attention to what we can do to help with creating these relationships of mutually interdependent friendship and belonging that I sketched out before and that we heard about from our panelists. What can we do to undo the fear we may ourselves be feeling and respond in spite of, not in the midst of that? So relationships start with learning each other's names. It seems really simple to say that, but it's a really important basic first start. Learning each other's names, listening to each other's stories, and tuning into each other's body cues. When it comes to relationships with those with disabilities, it may well include learning to understand someone who speaks with a significant speech impediment, or uses an assistive communication device like a text-to-speech device, or communicates largely in nonverbal ways. I often find that my own posture is key to this engagement. If I enter a space open to new relationships and assuming that someone has something important to communicate to me, however they may or may not be able to articulate that verbally, then I am far more likely to get curious about who they are and to tune in to what might be possible in this relationship. All right, we're going to go back to our annotation screen one more time because I'm a glutton for punishment, clearly. And I am just going to erase what we have on here real quick. Thank you. And I want to invite you this time to talk about some of the things that you have done to build friendship with people in general, right? Friendship takes time, and friendship doesn't form over 10 minutes of after church coffee or a few minutes on Zoom at the end of the day. So what are some things you have done recently with a friend to connect with them, to build friendship? I know it's COVID, I know it's complicated, but what have you managed to do with a friend. Just type that into the whiteboard so that we can all see. Ask how they're doing and follow up when they tell me something that's coming up. Intentionally carve out time on a consistent and regular basis to share how life is going. Those are great ideas. What are some other things you've done with a friend recently? Has anyone give them a gift based on their interest? Do some activities together, invite them to lunch. Do things you both like sports. Maybe play some basketball down at the park or play tennis. That's pretty COVID safe, right? Golf would probably work. Maybe some other things. Anything else you've done? Anybody had a friend with a birthday recently? Did you take them a present for their birthday? All right. Learn about things they're interested in. Absolutely. My best friend is the person I have been married to for 22 years, and we've known each other 25 years. And he has a lot of interests that are very, very different from mine. And I know it makes a huge difference to him when I take an interest in his interests, even though they're not mine. Okay, so we're going to just flip screens here. Oops. One of the best ways I know of to build deep friendships with people is to eat a meal with them. There's something built into us as human beings that joins indefinably with another person over a meal. Time sat around a campfire late in the evening has this special quality to it as well, doesn't it? What about sharing a hobby or attending a concert or a game? It may feel complicated to think about doing something like this with another student with a disability, regardless of what that disability is, because you may feel overwhelmed by all the special things it seems like this other person would need to be able to go out for a night on the town. But trust me when I say that they or their caregivers will happily teach you what is needed to make this kind of engagement possible. But there's another thing we need to think about and consider for this kind of friendship to become a true friendship. So often we keep the power dynamics in of abled and disabled engaged when we talk about friendships like this. So we feel good about ourselves because we're extending friendship to them. But for this to really get to the point of mutually interdependent friendship, that means we need to learn to have give and take. We need to rely on our new friends for things that they may be uniquely qualified to offer in our lives. This is not a pity party. This is not some token task that you think they could do to pretend as though the relationship were equal. This is also not expecting your new friend to do something they're incapable of or making that a requirement for the friendship to continue. And it's not about using the other person. That's not friendship, it's abuse. But think about it this way. A situation where you've had several friends over and your friend with an intellectual disability is the last one left at your house because you need to drive them home. If we think about Elizabeth's story, we may well ask if our friend could help us clean up before we drive them home. That's a perfectly reasonable give and take, and one that helps level the power differences between us as friends. Finally, friends celebrate one another's presence. We send each other encouraging messages, drop off little things to our friends because we were thinking of them, show up to do things they are participating in because those events or moments matter in our friend's life. I did this Ignite Berry talk a few years ago. There were a bunch of us and they were like mini TED talks, just 5 minutes. And I got up to speak and I realized that across the second row of chairs were 8 of my friends sitting there ready to cheer me on. They had just shown up. I didn't know they were coming, but they showed up because they wanted to cheer me on. That's what friends do, right? We show up for birthday parties and the play that they're in and the race that they're running and 1,000 other little things, right? Not every time or everything, but there's this celebratory thread that runs through friendship and helps to bind us together with one another, doesn't it? So I'm going to leave you with this question. What might it look like for you to begin a journey towards cultivating these types of mutual, interdependent friendships with those with disabilities in your community? I think we are going to finish with some time of Q&A. Christy, I'm only 1 minute late. I almost did it.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Heather. That was amazing. And yes, we will be doing a time of Q&A. So on our panel for Q&A, we have Heather. Okay, everyone knows who Heather is. We have also Cindy, who was in our video. Maybe Cindy could wave hi. We have Lynn, and I don't know if Elizabeth is there. Oh, I think they're away from their camera. Oh, Lynn is here. And also we have Rebecca and Rita. I don't know if you guys, yeah, there. Do you guys just want to give a little wave? Okay, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just unmute or also put it in the chat. Yeah, and I'll I'll put the time to you guys. Maybe I can start with a question for Rita and Rebecca. Rebecca, what's your favorite activity to do with your friends?
My favorite activity to do with my friends is playing games.
I love games. What type of games do you guys like to play?
Any, I remember Scribblio.
Scribble is a lot of fun. I'm really bad at
Pictionary.
And Pictionary. So you like drawing?
No, it's just Scribblio. I like drawing and guessing.
Thank you, Rebecca. And just someone said, not a question, but just wanted to say a huge thank you to Rebecca, Rita, Elizabeth, Lynn, Cindy for sharing their experiences and learn so much, and your contributions were so valuable. Thank you, everyone.
I have a question for Rebecca. Rebecca, when do you feel most loved at church?
I feel most loved at church when the kindergarten kids come and talk to me.
So you're like their older sister that they can turn to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so sweet.
What are the names of the friends that you have in the kindergarten friends that you have? Are there a few of them, or is it just like one or two friends?
Like, I don't remember, probably 4 or 3 or 4. I don't remember.
So one of the questions that we got in the chat is, what's a common myth or misconception surrounding disabilities that you wish more people would overcome? And maybe we can have each person on the panel just answer, and I'll maybe start with Lynn. And I don't know if Elizabeth is there, and then we'll go to Rita and Rebecca, then Heather, and then Cindy.
No, Elizabeth is gone. She stayed for about half of it, that's all. Probably because Elizabeth is severely intellectually impaired, the misconception that she can't possibly understand faith and that she doesn't get anything out of a church service.
And now we'll go to Rita and Rebecca. Are you guys there? Yeah.
Okay, let me answer it. I think, like, most people think that people with special needs or disabilities can't really communicate. They have, like, they think that it is hard for them to understand, like, people with disabilities. So this is what I think most people, you know, have that in their mind before they actually try to communicate with, you know, that particular person. Sometimes, like, I find when, like, a person really wants to reach out to a person with disabilities, they you know, that person with the special needs can communicate, yeah, with, like, with that he or she, so that like, you know, it is something that I think they haven't really tried enough to actually know that it is possible to communicate with a person who, like, who doesn't even have speech. But when, like, you actually put an effort to really learn to know each other, like, just like we know, like, anybody, right? We know our friends or family members or, like, anyone. So we have to learn to really understand what that person is doing. So sometimes I do find, like, people has the misconception or the myth that that person can really communicate. That person can really express themselves. So they just, they just, like, give up on that, like, or any, like, opportunity that they could, like, actually learn to know that person with special needs.
Thank you, Rita. And we're going to go to Heather now.
I think one of the misconceptions that I keep working at is the idea that those with disabilities need to be welcomed into the church and need a place of inclusion, but they don't have anything to offer. I think I heard from one father that, you know, the only thing his son, the thing his son had to offer the church was that he was there to be cared for. And I felt like, I feel like this is a very limited view of understanding how each and every person is part of the body of Christ. It doesn't add up to me. There are no unuseful bits in the body. Even the bits we're not quite sure what they do. Our bodies are unique and wonderful creatures, and if we lose those bits or they stop working, we start to notice quite quickly that something's not right. And I think that we need to take that kind of an understanding to those with disabilities in terms of their vocation, in terms of what they have to offer the body of Christ.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, everyone brought up some very good points. I think I just wanted to share that perhaps from my experience, there's a misconception that um, people with disabilities, especially my interaction with like perhaps children ministry or whatever, that they are perhaps a problem to be solved. And I say it in that way, not in like the intention is like very kind, like where, oh, we think that this child may have, or this child may need blah blah blah. Can you, Cindy, can you take a look at it, or like can you help us observe? But like it I find that approach is a myth. Like we shouldn't really approach our children in our midst in such a way that the focus of the church is not to perhaps like fix or like teach a certain skill or something. That we are more we are like a body who are trying to help each person find belonging. Um, and yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I would mention.
And I got some more questions in the chat. So this is for the parents. So Lynn and also Rita, what's something that makes you proud of your child? Or for both of your young adults now. We can start with Rita this time.
Okay. Rebecca is very special. Like she like, every now and then she'd give me surprises. And I remember like I was at church and her counselors, when she was still in youth group, now she's in young adult ministry. So when she was in youth group, so like the counselor would come to me and say, oh, it is a joy to work with Rebecca because she is so funny. Like she, yeah, every now and then, like now she is much older and she will remind me like, oh, mom, you shouldn't do this, you should do that. Because those are like routine, like that she has learned throughout her years. And I'm not that routine. I'm not as routine as her. So she'll remind me, no, you missed this step and you missed that step. And I was like, okay, you're correct. Yes, you are perfectly correct. But she like, she's growing. She started to remind me more and more things. And then I just slowly realized that I'm becoming older and older. And then like she has been my assistant since she was 4. Like she helped me with chores at home, like stuff from the very simple things. Now she can like do most of the like chores at home that I don't even know how to do that. Yeah, so sometimes she'll like teach me back, oh, well, this is how you should make it. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's correct. So like it is very interesting. I think for a typical parent, maybe, I don't know if they will experience the same magnitude as I am going through right now. Maybe a typical child may not like approach their parents in that way to point out you should have done this and not that. Maybe until, I don't know, until they become far much older. But because she has all these routines in her mind that well, you didn't do this, you should have done this. She pointed me right there, and then I realized, oh yes, yeah, that's why I fail, or that's why I cannot do it. So it is, an interesting dynamic between Rebecca and I, that think maybe a typical family, a typical parent and child or parent and young adult relationship may not have that or may not have that much. Yeah, so this is something.
And we'll go to Lynn, and we have a few more questions. So I'm looking through them, and we'll be also talking about them. I do realize it's 9, so we'll just keep going for a bit. Sorry, take it away, Lynn.
Two things make me really proud for Elizabeth. One is her zest for life. Life isn't easy for her due to the nature of her disabilities, both physiological and developmental. And the other thing that makes me very proud is the fact that she has chosen a life of faith, that she wants to be involved with church. And that makes me proud. It also gives me a sense of comfort because I know that God reaches out to her in some way. And my hope is that he will be part of the strength as she goes on later in life when I am not around to be part of the strength and support for her.
Thank you, Lynn. And also to our previous question, I did get a message from Bella, who is a mother of Christy, who is also a young adult with disabilities. And she said that one misconception is that we have to change our way to suit or accommodate them instead of accepting their creativity or different from what we think is normal. And I'll just do one last question. It's kind of a 2-in-1 combo. So it's regarding including those with disabilities in our churches. So we have questions in terms of what's the best way to include those with disabilities within, how to start including those with disabilities in our children's ministry. So we have someone whose church just started intentionally including people with disabilities. And also, what are some ways that we can help those with disabilities discover and use their spiritual gifts? And I'll just open this question to anyone that's on our panel.
I think in terms of the second part of the question, the discovering someone's spiritual gifts, the biggest first step for that, I think, is building relationship with people. You have to spend time with people. There are so many levels of barriers to finding out somebody's spiritual gifts, even in the best case scenario. With someone who is able-bodied and thinks that God loves them and has given them spiritual gifts and would like to know it. Even that can be tricky. But when it comes to someone who's maybe been told their whole life that they don't have something to offer, is maybe not sure whether God could love a person like them, or maybe has people in their life who are telling them that they don't have anything that they could contribute. It can be really important to start by spending time with them, get to know them, build a relationship with them, because what you'll start to see is the things that they thrive at, that they excel at. But more than that, there's a theologian named Brian Brock who writes a lot about disability. And he talks about the fact that spiritual gifts aren't something that we create in ourselves, or even that God creates in us. Spiritual gifts are something that happens in the space between us. And there's no space between us if we're not in relationship with someone. And so for all those reasons, the very first thing is build a friendship. And then see where it takes you. You never know what very unique spiritual gifts the friendship you have might birth.
In our case, I would say the one thing that two things made a huge difference. First of all, thanks to Reverend Dr. Cynthia Tam, we formed a circle of support. So we intentionally chose people to become friends, but also promoters of inclusion for Elizabeth. And the other thing that made a big difference for us was the involvement of our minister. So top down. So not only were people helping Elizabeth be more visible, but our minister preached many, many times about the importance of inclusion, the importance of people with disabilities, the contribution of people with disabilities. So I think the two pieces, I think the low level, but also the high level. So that gives a lot of people an education about it.
I totally agree with Lynn. The reason why, like, what we have experienced, what we are right now is because, well, the church, pastors, well, the leaders at church, like, know the value, like, well, or like they value each one of us, like of our church member with special needs, and they give them or like value their abilities, no matter how much they can contribute to church. They totally understand that each one of the member is an asset to church. But for the family, for the parents, or even for our young adults, for we are like, just like Heather was talking about, give and take. So it is like, church give us a chance to participate, and we participate, right? We join the events, whatever church events, or any chance that we can help out. We will participate, and we'll bring Rebecca or take any other, families or, young adults with special needs to join. So church give us the opportunity, invite us, and we go. So there is two directions. So that's how I see, like, why, like how church, we can be more involved in the children's ministry.
One thing I would add, be aware that some families may be slow to respond to the idea of being more included, of being more visible, because it's highly probable that they have been places where they have been shunned. And making yourself available and making yourself visible, you have to make yourself vulnerable to do that. And so be aware that some families, they might not be ready for it yet, or they may just need extra encouragement from you because they've faced difficult circumstances before in other places.
Thank you, everyone, for your responses. Cindy, I see that you're unmuted, Cindy. Maybe you can add something quickly, but it is 10 minutes after 9, so I'm gonna wrap it up soon. Go ahead.
Yes. Those are amazing answers. I'll only add like a few checklists. Like one of them could be to talk with the parents to have what that child enjoys available at church, when we do things, when we play, maybe their favorite toy, maybe whatever it is. Just taking a look at your environment to see if it's accessible, the basics, and also getting to know, getting to know the child. And also you could try and look at some ways to learn about disability awareness activities for everyone in the children, like including the other children in your ministry, so that they are educated on how to include someone who may have barriers, how to overcome barriers, and why we allow certain things for so and so and not for so and so, like what like or even sharing those accessibility pieces that works for another child too. So like a lot of things to explore together through friendship. You don't have to get it perfect right away.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, to Lynn, Rita, and Rebecca, Cindy, and Heather, for everything, and for just speaking at the workshop again, Heather. So this wraps up our workshop for tonight. I did want to do a quick plug for Cynthia, who just recently wrote a book based on her doctoral thesis, Kinship in the Household of God, towards a practical theology of belonging and spiritual care of people with profound autism. So I'll be putting some of the information about the book in the Facebook page and also on the Instagram for the event, as well as the Eventbrite. So we'll have all that information there if you're interested in purchasing her book. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella, for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Heather. That was amazing. Oh, I didn't stop recording.